As you will remember, we have seen that editing a photograph like this is not easy. If the aim is to radically change the color of the dress and the background, we must consider that the initial color of the fabric is quite close to the skin tone. In one of the previous videos, I showed that the hue saturation adjustment has difficulty separating the skin tone from the dress because, when we define an area of intervention, the adjustment only takes into account the hue, ignoring saturation and brightness. MTC ChromaWarp intervenes in a much more selective way. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go back to the gradient example we used at the beginning. If I want to intervene on a blue area with a certain saturation and brightness, I would have to select the input color I am interested in, for example, this one. At the same time, however, I don't want a blue with the same hue but different saturation and brightness to be affected by the maneuver. More realistically, I want it to be affected as little as possible. I just need to define two anchor points, like this one, which is lighter and less saturated, and of course something darker, same saturation. And now the adjustments I make with the plugin will not affect, or will only minimally affect, the areas I have chosen. This is exactly what we need to do if we want to adjust this photograph. Let's start by fixing three input colors. First, the background, which presents no problems, and two different points on the dress. We need at least two, because the hue is always the same, but the brightness is very different in various areas. Let's take one here and one here. The 2 points on the wheel show that the hue and saturation are very similar, but the brightness clearly is not. Remember that the color wheel cannot display brightness. At this point, we need to protect the skin tone, and we do this with anchor points. Let's set some of them, noting that some areas have a different color due to the light reflected from the dress. In this case, perhaps, we don't want the current color to be preserved 100%. Therefore, we do not fix them and wait to see what happens. To simplify things, let's fix some color samplers. I would put one on the forehead, one on the cheek, one on the lip, and one in this darker area below the lip. At this point, we click on the icon that allows us to load the color samplers as anchor points, and we respond yes to the plugin's request to proceed. We are ready to redefine the colors, and we do so in a rather radical way. The background does not give us any major problems because it is very different from the rest. Now we move the 2 points that identify the color of the robe, which we want to make a deep purple, remembering that they define areas of different brightness. It therefore makes sense that the 2 points, which were originally very close together, still have final positions close to each other. Otherwise, we would notice a difference in hue or saturation between the light and dark parts of the robe, which we do not want. At this point, we can check whether the skin tone has changed color. If you see a big difference, it is because of simultaneous contrast, that is, because the robe has changed color and makes us perceive the skin differently. But if we zoom in and check, we notice that it has not changed, or that the change is so small as to be negligible. The question remains about the reflection of the robe. It was originally orange, now it is purple. And in fact, in some areas, this is noticeable. In my opinion, this is not a flaw. The original color has changed because it was extremely close to that of the dress, and a purple robe cannot cause an orange reflection. If you wish, you can still try inserting new anchor points to fix the colors that bother you, or work with a brush on the layer mask of the color lookup adjustment layer that the plugin has created. The choice is yours, and it is largely creative rather than corrective. The important thing is that you have noticed how MTC ChromaWarp makes it easy and intuitive to work on certain colors, thanks to the fact that it takes into account all the parameters that define a color, not just the hue.